All right, it's 10 o'clock. Thanks everybody for joining. Kathleen, I'm going to let you kick this segment off from your side, introduce whoever's going to be presenting. For everybody that's just joining, this is the, hopefully know, because you probably registered, this is the ExtraHop Tech Thursday that we do internally here at Set Solutions. So Kathleen, I'll let you kick it off, and then at the end of this whole thing, I'll send us off.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm Kathleen Pimentel, and I live here in Houston, Texas. And what we're going to do is we've got a use case demo coming up with Steve McGee, and then we're going to have a roadmap presentation from Ted Driggs. And before I let Tom Rowe, if you want to jump in here and kind of introduce or set it up, I would like everyone to know who's attended. If you're on this call right now, this Zoom meeting, we will be sending you a $25 Uber Eats gift code by way of email. So at the end of this, at 11 o'clock-ish, you'll be getting an email from us thanking you for your participation, and then we'll connect you to the teams that are relevant to your company. And with that, Tom Rowe.
Sure. Thank you, Kathleen. This is Tom Rowe. I run the regional technical team, or SE team, with ExtraHop, based out of Katy. Myself, I've got a handful of other folks with ExtraHop as well. Quick 30-minute kind of high level. ExtraHop is a packet analytics platform that fits into a number of spaces. I believe several of you are probably familiar with the product, but specifically speaking, the worlds of packet capture, network detection and response, next-gen IDS, IoT security, network performance management, number of things that we do, but fundamentally we make a passive network appliance that does full-time, real-time streaming analytics of packets. So there's a lot of use cases you can apply to that, as I mentioned, but today what we wanted to focus on for the Tech Thursday is a key use case that is pretty highly relevant in today's times, and that is the whole kind of VPN work from home use case. We have worked with a lot of existing and prospective organizations here over the last month or so as they've enabled the work from home function, in a lot of cases with a lot of challenges, bottlenecks encountered anywhere from authentication bottlenecks, AD, VPN concentrators, proxy servers, etc. So, and there's security challenges around that as well. So, very, very topical in today's times, and we want to walk you through some of the things we've done. So I'm going to hand it off to Steve McGee here at half past the hour. We are going to have a product roadmap update. So with our head of product, who'll be joining, he's going to walk us through the latest and greatest of what ExtraHop is doing in the realm of cloud security, IoT security, machine learning, etc. So with that, I will hand it off to Steve McGee.
Thank you, Tom, and good morning, everyone. Just quick introduction to myself, Steve McGee here. I'm one of the senior systems engineers with ExtraHop. I'm based out of Dallas. I've actually been with ExtraHop now for maybe a few weeks away from 7 years. Been a little bit of an old hat here with ExtraHop, given our total company tenure. And I also spent about 15 years in operations, running operations for a public sector software development company, IT operations. So come from an operational background, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what we're doing to help with keeping an eye on your VPN / work from home users. And I would just ask that if you have questions as I'm going through any of this, please drop them in the chat, or I will also leave a little bit of time towards the end of my time slot for some interactive Q&A as well. But I'm just kind of laying the foundation here. There's a few things you really want to understand about your VPN traffic to ensure that not only is your VPN performant and your users are able to access the necessary resources for them to get their jobs done, but also provide the ability to ensure your company data is secure and not being leaked or even accessed by unauthorized persons over what could be a kind of newly implemented or newly accessible communication path into your organization. Throw out a little bit of a disclaimer here. So this is demo data. So this is, might not be as interesting or complete as production traffic. It certainly shouldn't be as interesting as what, your organization's VPN traffic would be. But I'm gonna make the best of it here. We've actually got a ton of customers, already gaining value out of this simple little bundle. And this, along with many other bundles, is freely available on our community forums. Other things out there also applicable in this time is things like looking at cloud application consumption, where your clients are coming from and that type of stuff. But just kind of focusing on the data here, the first thing I'll point out is kind of a total throughput to your VPN client base. And this can be through a single or multiple VPN concentrators or firewalls. We can look at things, from the inside of the firewall, from the outside of the firewall or concentrator, what have you. But, kind of first thing you might want to know is, how much traffic am I actually consuming of my corporate internet circuit to my VPN clients? And that's what we're showing here is kind of total traffic throughput. It's a time series data. I'm locked into about a 30-minute window here. Again, just for the sake of the demo data. But we're able to do things like overlay a potential, cap or availability of internet throughput that would be available to us, either, again, via SD-WAN or by my VPN concentrator. So I get a sense for how close am I getting to my capacity at when. And, another thing that we're really calling out here right up front is, how much of this VPN traffic is inbound, to my corporate assets, versus, what might be coming into the VPN and then going out to the public internet of the World Wide Web. And there are some business decisions that may be made that dictate how you implement some VPN configurations, like split tunneling, that determines whether you're going to backhaul all of your connected users' internet traffic through your corporate network, possibly to make sure that goes through CASB or proper web proxies and security, safe browsing, that type of stuff. Or if you really want to separate that, have their browsing traffic go out their local connection. You pick up on things like people watching Netflix. If you're not doing split tunneling, you've got some users connected into their VPN. Maybe they're on their lunch break and they're tuning into Netflix or Pluto TV or something like that. They start streaming a bunch of video and saturating your corporate links. That could be a problem. But again, if you're doing so to force that traffic through proxies for inspection, that type of stuff, that might be a business decision you've made. But we help not only validate those types of configurations with a simple chart like this, but give you the ability to drill in and see exactly what these people, what your users are doing on those VPN connections. We get, we're breaking this out, and there's a lot of this. I'm not going to do a whole lot of click throughs because we can go almost in an infinite number of directions with this data. It really is a tremendous data set, but we're pulling forward the KPIs most relevant to us, to consume this data at a glance. As I filter down the page here, I start getting into my conversation pairs, so I can understand, from an endpoint perspective and an internal or external asset perspective, how much traffic are these guys using in a conversation? What are the protocols or applications being used? Can apply intelligent labels like this is Zoom traffic or WebEx traffic, that type of information here. Again, kind of differentiating that, whether it's internal or external, verifying, validating, that split tunneling type of configuration. And, kind of as I look down this chart and get into the network latency, that's where a lot of this supporting data is going to really kind of come to a head is, is this impacting my users? And the way you measure that is going to be with that latency. Being able to understand what that network latency looks like, for my VPN clients, and again, differentiating that versus, internal assets that they're accessing versus, again, those external assets that I may not necessarily care about. If they're coming through and it's slow for them to access YouTube or something, non-company related, I might not care about that as much as I do, making sure it's performant as they access my internal assets. So again, we're able to differentiate that. And again, the ability to drill down here, I can click in and get, individual client IPs or remote assets, even conversation pair level latency, so I can understand if it is internal, I'm seeing high latency. Is it a single asset where maybe I've got some internal network saturation or contention going on? Or is it more widespread and impacting, a group or a number of my VPN clients? Something that I'll kind of pop into here in a minute also is the ability to look kind of from a geographic and geolocation perspective of where, where my traffic's coming from, which kind of helps, give a little bit of insight into the security perspective, security lens, if you will, on where my clients are. Am I getting connections from suspicious countries or areas where I don't have remote workers, as well as potentially even graphing latency by geolocation and defining some thresholds or alerts to say, hey, looks like everybody in the Northeast is seeing some latency. Maybe that we can help pinpoint a specific ISP that is in common. So there's a lot of that type of data that can ultimately be consumed and help make those decisions on how you proceed, troubleshoot, and communicate. Kind of continuing down this dashboard a little bit, we get into a little bit more of the kind of the traffic consumption. Thinking about this again from not necessarily the performance side, but again on the security side. Do I have a VPN user that is potentially staging a lot of data? We can even drill into this and get a sense for which file shares or even files that they're accessing, which database servers they're communicating with, and down to the specific methods and queries that are being instrumented there. There's a lot of this that's going on that we are visualizing, and additionally, we're applying some machine learning to this information as well, so we can start understanding the normal behavior of these type of assets and their interactions with our servers, and then bubble up detections around things that might be considered abnormal or anomalies. Kind of beating down this just a few more things. That this is totally not going to take an entire 20 minutes for me to cover, but we really are consuming a lot of data very quickly, and so I'm just going to do my best to describe again the different aspects of what we're providing. So looking at those kind of per VPN client asset throughput. Again, are that impacting their connection? Is it impacting the corporate connection? Or is it, an unusual volume that I would expect for any specific user? And so we'd be identifying the workstation assets here, their peers, and what my busiest assets, on the corporate side or on the internet side, where we're seeing traffic. We can do some things. Again, my demo data's got some holes in it, but we can do some things like associate the usernames that are being authenticated over those VPN connections with those client IPs. And so, you know, there's different ways. If we weren't bubbling this up here, you could always drill into a specific asset and see who's been logging into it. But you know, having that, you know, front and center here, if I come in and see a specific IP address that's doing a lot of data, and if I can readily associate, you know, a username that's logged in on that asset, I, you know, kind of, you know, narrow my time spent in, you know, looking up a user or trying to find out who I need to contact about something that I need to speak with someone on and investigate. Breaking down the number of active VPN clients here, their consumption of, you know, teleconference protocols, and then just a general overview of the types of traffic composition that's being sent across. And again, the ability to drill in and see which of my assets are consuming, you know, these volumes of traffic, and even going down into the individual transactions that are there. Another thing that we're able to do, and this is a slight modification that I made to the out-of-the-box bundle. And you know, these are, I've always preached that our dashboards and our bundles are evolutionary. So there may be KPIs on here that I don't necessarily care about as an organization, and others that I do that haven't been presented. So it's really easy to kind of customize these with a kind of a drag and drop. Well, what you see is what you get. A method of dashboard editing, and I dropped in here, you know, where I'm seeing invalid password errors from people authenticating for my VPN clients. And another one that I'm working on is being able to track where I see maybe password changes for you know, people connecting into my VPN. So I might pick up on some type of brute force attempt from the outside. And if I'm looking at traffic on you know, both the inside and the outside of my firewall VPN concentrator, I can associate those with public IP addresses, and not to mention the ability to start integrating with some general workflows and automated remediation. I can define, you know, some thresholds or work on, you know, machine learning based anomalies to say, hey, there's an abnormal volume of invalid passwords coming from this, you know, IP address. I could then have my ExtraHop system make an API call into my firewall or my network access control, and do things like apply an ACL to block that IP address for, you know, an indefinite amount of time, or even get into integrations with SOAR platforms that may block that IP address for an hour or 24 hours and then remove that block in the event that you know, there was a temporary type of dynamic IP out there on the internet that may end up being reused. So there's a lot of decisions that might dictate how I respond to some of this, but being the extensible platform that RevealX is, you know, my capabilities are about as bound by anything as it is my imagination. Last couple of things here is kind of, again, kind of digging in on additional network latency, and you know, if it's internal, if it's external, you know, getting some ideas of groupings associated with segments of my network or segments of my clients, or if it's more general spread, and helping narrow down where I might need to triage and further my investigation. So that, in brief, is the VPN monitoring bundle that's available. If we have any existing customers on the call right now, this is something that's out on the community forums for you to download. A couple of other things that I did want to touch on was, again, you know, the ability to look at you know, those cloud applications that are being consumed. And so do I have volumes of traffic that are associated with like ESPN or Google Video, CNN, that type of stuff? We kind of in a weird climate right now where there's probably not a whole lot of real-time streaming of sporting events, unfortunately. But you know, we will get through this and return to normal operations. And this is something that's not only applicable to, monitoring my VPN clients, but monitoring, my general, corporate network and users, making sure they're adhering to end user computing or acceptable use policies, that type of stuff. And then just a quick example here of what our geo-mapping capabilities look like. So this would be, again, the ability to look at, specific segments of my network or segments of traffic, types of traffic. Maybe it's VPN clients, maybe it's my web servers or SSL servers. But I can look at those inbound communications and see where they're coming from. I might not expect for traffic to be coming to me from Moscow, but I can see, here's the IP addresses and the numbers of connections. I've done a number of customizations around this where we can color code these dots. By default, this is kind of a heat map by volume of traffic, which colors the brightness of the green dot. But we can absolutely apply alerting thresholds and chart on things like latency. So I could, if I'm seeing latency above, 200 milliseconds, I can start coloring dots red and get a sense for, am I getting latency in geographic regions, that type of stuff. But if I've got those suspicious connections coming in that I don't expect connecting to my VPN, I can do investigations like I could come and grab this IP address, throw it back over in a search bar and search against all my transactional records and see what those IPs are doing on my network. So with that, I will, I haven't seen any questions come across in the chat. I would, open the floor to any questions anyone might have on the call.
Yeah. And Steve, this is Tom. I might ask if you give up control. I've got a couple of the thoughts I kind of wanted to put up on the screen, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to chime in via the chat right now and we can talk through it. Can you stop sharing your screen, Steve?
Yep. All right.
So, like I said, happy to answer any questions. So I just kind of want to anecdotally talk through some of the efforts I've personally been involved in here. Whoops, my screen sharing went away. Yeah. So this is Tom Rowe again. I've personally been working with a very large international conglomerate over the course of the past month, and it's been a fascinating journey. As of a month ago, when you literally take a couple 100,000 employees and plop them on a work from home VPN type of network, and immediately most of them, or a good portion of them, were not able to do their work. I mean, business almost shuts down. And so there's been a whole multitude of things that we've worked with this customer on and optimizing the work from home use case. So, and I just kind of enumerated a few of them on here, but, if you fundamentally think about, you've got your VPN concentrators, you've got your dual factor authentication elements, you've got, in some cases, proxies. So, a big question to kind of, see one of the whole things is whether or not you're doing split tunneling, and there's reasons to do it, and there's reasons to not do it. Obviously, from a performance perspective, if you split tunnel, there's a lot of goodness there, and a lot of you might be using SASE products like Zscaler or Palo Alto Prisma that can help a lot of that. But the particular customer I was working with, they did not use split tunneling in-house, largely due to security purposes. They had proxy servers in place and some other scanning elements that they still insisted that some degree of analysis occurred on from a security perspective. But it's been an interesting journey working with that customer because it's basically been playing whack-a-mole, finding where the bottlenecks were. We found some bottlenecks in their VPN concentrator initially, and even some bottlenecks further up in their ISP world as well. So I mean, so being able to kind of triage and isolate where an issue is, We saw some degree of, packet retransmission and loss on the WAN side, but not that much to really impact end users. But massive bottlenecks on their VPN concentrator. This particular customer is using F5. And there were multiple elements of that. First of all, there was a licensing bottleneck, and then we got to a hardware bottleneck. And so that customer ended up having to deploy additional VPN concentrators in other sites. So you fix a lot of that stuff, and we've worked further downstream, and we found proxy server bottlenecks. So in that particular case, users to concentrator's good after a few weeks. Now you got the proxy, but the proxy has a bunch of rules and things that have been designed and in place over the course of multiple years here at this point. So, they ultimately identified that there were proxy bottlenecks. The proxy hardware wasn't big enough to support the use case. And so they started diverting some and then ultimately all of their traffic around their proxy servers. When they did that, they identified that they had some routing issues because they were expecting all the traffic to go to the proxies, and now all the traffic was going, user to VPN concentrator directly out to what is in a lot of cases is going to be SaaS-based services and whatnot. So this whole continuum of different issues kind of popped up. We even got into some CRL and OCSP checking issues where previously a lot of that stuff originated from the proxy servers, and then once they stopped using their proxies, the CRL checking was broken. Same thing with DNS. And so it's been a fascinating journey to walk this particular customer through. We fix one issue and a problem kind of moves further up the stack itself. So a lot of things to kind of keep in mind as we work through this new normal. Thankfully, I think a lot of us are a month or so into this year, and like I said, we've worked with a lot of customers who have had issues. I think a lot of those have gotten stabilized. A lot of our colleagues that work at some of the big, two-factor auth companies and VPN concentrator companies and proxy companies, they've been very busy as well, selling products and licenses and things like that. So these are all things ExtraHop can help you with at the end of the day. And I just kind of wanted to point that out here. We are going to have our head of product here join in just a couple of minutes. And Kathleen, if you can keep an eye out for Ted and tell me when he hops on here. I want to extend that previous slide that I was talking about to just kind of a couple of walkthroughs in the product to give you some kind of idea of some of the other capabilities of ExtraHop as it relates to the work from home notion. So, one of my previous views was things to look for was potentially DNS errors. And so a lot of ExtraHop existing customers kind of consider ExtraHop to be kind of like a Wireshark on steroids, real-time streaming analysis, 10, 25 gig, 50 gig, 100 gigs a second, full on layer 2 through layer 7. And it's this type of visibility that has ultimately helped us isolate a lot of the bottlenecks. Steve walked you through a lot of them, but just to kind of show you, examples of where some of the accompanying infrastructure like domain controllers and DNS servers can cause your work from home functions to be slow. In this environment here, this is basically a breakdown of all DNS activity over a 5-hour window of time. I can tell you how many responses there were. I can tell you what types of lookups were made, whether or not those lookups failed or succeeded. I can tell you what those lookups were. And again, I go back to this use case with this particular customer that I was working with. As they had made changes in their environment, they realized that some of the changes weren't resolving properly from a DNS perspective. And so as opposed to kind of checking those things out onesie twosie with PCAPs and Wireshark or try to use traditional logs to do that, ExtraHop was already in place. And so we were really quickly able to come in and see, for example, if, you know, certain requests, DNS requests, authentication dips to Active Directory and Kerberos were failing or whatnot. So, and you're able to do that really quickly. That's one of the big things is speed to resolution here. So I showed you some error elements, for example. We also track response times as well, as Steve had kind of touched on. So this particular customer I was working with, just due to the nature of how their environment was set up, they started flooding one of their DNS servers, and they got to a point where one of them was taking several seconds to process DNS requests, which adds up over time. So we track response times basically of requests coming out of DNS servers. And actually the problem with that particular customer got so bad that the DNS server was actually failing to respond at all in some cases, what we call a DNS timeout, where it just gets so overwhelmed. In fact, you see right here 170 DNS timeouts. So it's all part of the interesting web of things that kind of make up our end users. Kathleen?
Sorry, Ro. Ted Driggs is on. I see him.
Okay, gotcha. Hey, Ted Driggs, how you doing?
Great, thank you. Yourself?
I'm great, thanks. You've got a fairly captive audience here, and yeah, per our conversations, we're gonna let you dive into the latest and greatest of what ExtraHop has on the roadmap. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ted Driggs, the head of product at ExtraHop. Excited to have him on, and yeah, we've got about 29 minutes here to the top of the hour, Ted.
All right, great, thank you. So welcome to my basement. And let me go ahead and share my slides here. All right, can everyone see, Tom, can you see this?
Yep, we can.
Excellent. All right. So I'm going to talk about some of the items that we've done recently, some of the items that we have in the coming quarter, and how those align to our broader themes for 2020. ExtraHop's RevealX product has, since its inception, felt that noise and fatigue are two of the major problems in any security team and even any ops team's day-to-day work. Right, the pace of development and the pace of business has accelerated, and the move to remote work caused by COVID-19 has accelerated the pace of change for environments. So teams really have to be very nimble now. And that means that they need their tools to provide them not only with great detections that are low noise and high signal, but they also need to provide investigations that can deliver useful answers about what that detection is. Otherwise, it's just an alert cannon and it's not useful. Cloud, some of you may have noticed that cloud is becoming a thing. I think that AWS said that only 3% of the world's spend, IT spend totally, is on cloud right now. And if they increase the size of AWS reInvent 30 times over, I will not go again, because it's already 55,000 people and growing massively each year. But for ExtraHop, cloud security actually has two facets. One is the protection of cloud workloads. So as our customers move their work into the cloud, we need to provide the same security for east-west protection that we do on-prem. Second is cloud delivery of the value of ExtraHop. So ExtraHop is an extremely powerful solution, and we want to make that solution available to more customers without needing them to do as much care and feeding of the product. So we're going to talk a little bit later on about what we're doing there to really improve the cloud delivery as well as the cloud monitoring side. Finally, device identification. So there are entire products out there that are now focusing in on identifying IoT devices, the software that runs on them, what they do in the environment. We believe that that's a necessary part of a complete NDR solution, but that it doesn't make sense as a standalone product. A product that just provides inventory without detection doesn't give you a comprehensive protection, and a product that provides detection without identification can't contextualize what it's showing you. All right, now that we've talked about those broad themes, let's look at how those have actually practically impacted what we've delivered so far this year. The first thing is RevealX Cloud, which is a working name. It's going to change before the thing really ships, but this is a cloud-delivered security for on-prem and cloud workloads. So down here we have this double helix of binary, which is how we represent packets, that is being fed into a sensor. That sensor could live in a branch office. It could live on a VM in a customer environment. It could be a physical sensor in a customer environment, or it could be a VM in one of the public cloud providers. We support Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud Platform. That part is not new. What's new is the cloud record store, cloud control plane pieces of this, where instead of needing to run an Explorer appliance or any record store yourself, the records are sent up to ExtraHop where they are stored and indexed, and customers just have to pay for what they ingest. That is then consumed through a cloud control plane, which is the same UI that you're used to with ExtraHop, but is accessible from anywhere securely. And as a result, it feels like RevealX, it behaves like RevealX, but a big chunk of the deployment questions have been handled as a service for you and are available in a much more dynamic on-demand fashion. All right, now for customers who aren't using the cloud service, we still wanted to provide flexibility in terms of how records are stored and queried. We've gotten input from customers who have existing data lakes and want to reuse those systems rather than running a separate Explore cluster to achieve the same effect. So the Discover appliances can now be told to use Splunk or BigQuery as a backend instead of an Explore cluster. And the UI is able to query those records and display them the same as it would coming from the Explore appliances. So we have customers who have massive Splunk deployments with hundreds of nodes in them, and they're able to leverage that with ExtraHop and the power of wire data to get a really good start to finish experience. All right, next up we have detection access control. So that was a big context shift, by the way. That's why I paused, because this is quite different. But as we've seen security and ops teams begin to partner more closely, we've gotten input from security teams that they want their ops teams to have access to the metrics and transactions that ExtraHop surfaces, but that they are nervous about exposing the detections. One story that we heard was from someone who wanted to open this up to 200 app owners within their organization, but were concerned that in case of a detection, even if the security team had addressed it, app owners might panic and begin to take their apps offline to protect their customers' data. So a contained security incident would become a massive ops incident because of people who didn't have the right context when they were reading the detections and did the wrong things. So to address that, we've added a feature where you can now, on a per user basis, say whether or not detections are accessible. This integrates with our existing roles for access control, so you can tailor a person's permissions to what they have a legitimate business interest in. And we think this will help a lot with getting security and ops teams to speak a common language and reduce the friction that comes with them using different tools to view the same data. For those people who can see detections, we've improved the detection filtering. So if you didn't use the product before 8.0, this won't be super clear what we've done, but we've changed how the filters are positioned to make the detections page prioritize the things that are, we believe, more likely to be malicious or needing immediate attention. And we've also given the page more horizontal space so that you can read the details of these more easily. We now also, when we have explanations for the given detection type, we will show the explanation for that much more clearly in this screen on large monitors. So those of you who have 4K monitors, like this one that is currently heating up my other laptop, we now take advantage of that large screen to show you more information at once. This is a feature that so actually when we click on the investigate detection button from here, we get to a feature that I'm really excited about. Zero-click inline investigations. So ExtraHop has, for several releases, provided links to other parts of the product to show you data that would be relevant to the individual detection that you're viewing. These are not canned steps. These are dynamically generated for each detection based on the particulars of that finding. So now we've gone a step further and we've actually pulled the data that we were previously linking to directly into this screen, so that as an analyst, if I click that link from an email or I click that link in Slack, I don't have to know anything about ExtraHop or navigate anywhere to see where the SQLi was. I'm one click away from getting a PCAP of that, which is the bullseye. I can then use that go to records search button or the equivalent go to metrics and go to packets to further investigate. So we really think this page is becoming a one-stop shop for everything that's needed to triage an ExtraHop detection. And I'm really pumped about it because it's super cool. Next up is ML-Derived device criticality. So when we think about a customer's network, there are certain systems that the customer knows are sensitive and should not be compromised, right? Or rather, it would be particularly bad if those devices were compromised. It turns out that there are often also systems in that environment that are critical for non-obvious reasons, whether that's because they serve, their single points of failure in the infrastructure, or they're providing authentication. So if an attacker compromises these, then they're from here to the crown jewels is one step away. So we've begun using our ML to identify these devices automatically and then to surface that in the product UI, which you can see here is marked with a crown. All right. Theme updates. So we've given the, I can't really see anyone on here, but how many people, Tom, would you say were on the product back in the 5.0, 6.0 days?
Probably only a few on the existing. So we've got some existing customers and then a bunch of customers of set solutions here, so prospects as well. So okay. Probably a mix of both, but mostly folks that do not have background with ExtraHop.
So I have red-green color confusion, which apart from meaning that I have no future in ops, means that I perceive colors a bit differently from some other people. But back in the 5.0, 6.0 days, like in hindsight, even I would say that the product was not the prettiest thing in the universe. And then our design team got turned loose on it, and as you can see here, like the visuals of the product have gotten a lot better, but importantly, the accessibility has also gotten a lot better. So in addition to making this a much more pleasant thing to use on a daily basis, we've added the high contrast theme, which is great for projectors in rooms without blinds. So our sales team loves that because when they are allowed to go on site and they end up presenting somewhere that doesn't have great lighting, they can use that to make sure that everyone can see it. And then we also have dark themes for users who prefer that. And we have a light theme that is available too. And actually,
AKA hacker mode.
Sorry?
AKA hacker mode.
Yes. All right. On the platform front, we've added a 5 gigabit per second hardware sensor, the EDA 4200. So this fits well in between the 1200 and the 10 gigabit 6200. We've also added a 1 gigabit sensor for GCP to go with the launch of GCP packet mirroring. So AWS and GCP both now have agentless solutions for sending traffic from instances to ExtraHop for analysis, which is huge for two reasons. One is you don't need to run any agents to acquire traffic in the cloud. And two, you can now automate the tapping and traffic acquisition process in cloud using entirely cloud native tools. So our SEs can probably speak to this even better than I can, but the shift to how easy it is to acquire traffic in the cloud now is just stunning. It went from being a real challenge of how do we monitor cloud workloads to cloud workloads are almost easier to monitor than on-prem workloads because the providers have exactly one native packet mirroring solution available. lastly, we've added the EU region for RevealX Cloud. So this is referring to the AWS monitoring piece of RevealX Cloud. So you can now monitor EU workloads with ExtraHop deployed sensors for you that you can consume through the Cloud Control Plane and use the Cloud Record Store. All right, so that's everything that's happened so far. Now let's get to the forward-looking stuff. So ExtraHop ships on a quarterly cadence. The things that you're about to see will be coming out between now and end of June, mid-July. So yeah, first thing that we want to talk about is MITRE ATT&CK, which is a framework to help defenders figure out their coverage from the tools that they use and make sure that they have appropriate responses in place for the tactics and techniques that attackers might employ. Starting in 8.1, ExtraHop will surface this attack matrix that you're seeing here and highlight which techniques we have detection types covering. You'll be able to browse those even if you have not yet received a detection of that type. So you can use this to get a live view of the protection that ExtraHop's providing you, even if that thing has not happened in your environment yet. This is something that we've heard from multiple customers is really valuable to them when they're combining multiple tools in like the SOC triad model to see that they've got complete coverage. As well as knowing when something bad happens, where should they go or which tools should they be engaging with to get information and to move quickly to triage and mitigate the threat. Next thing that we're adding is the ability for monitoring of cloud workloads in AWS, create sensors on demand. So starting sometime in July, you will be able to log into RevealX Cloud and say, okay, well, I've got my on-prem workloads and that's great, but I want to spin up some cloud environment and I want monitoring for that. So you'll create the sensor through our UI and it'll be up and running within a couple minutes. And you only have to pay for the hours that you use that sensor. So when you're done with it, you can tear it down. And if you have a burst to cloud model or if you have seasonality in your cloud, you don't have to pay for any analysis capacity that you're not using. This will also provide a way for you to monitor your record volume that you're generating. So with the Cloud Record Store, you can purchase capacity reservations, which are very attractively priced, but you also have the option to do on demand, which is priced per gigabyte. So what that means is if you have variability, you can choose a capacity reservation option that is appropriate for your general use, but you don't need to worry that you're going to drop records or miss things if you have an unexpected spike. We will absorb that for you and just charge a pretty competitive per gigabyte price that will be announced later this month. All right. In 8.0, we made a pretty significant change for customers who were on the product before. So prospects, cover your ears because this next section is not something that you will ever need to worry about, but we changed how we identify devices from using IP addresses as the primary identifier to using the MAC addresses. And we added ways to receive relayed DHCP so that we can find out the true MAC addresses of IP addresses that are distant from the sensor. One of the consequences of that was that now a device can have multiple IP addresses over its lifetime. So we now track what IPs we've seen on that device and when we saw them so that we can answer the question, hey, who was 10.10.247.19 last week, even if that IP address has since been reassigned by your DHCP server. In keeping with the attaching IPs thing, VPN usage has exploded as a result of the shift to work from home during the pandemic and the stay-at-home orders. We got feedback from our customers that they were struggling to connect the home user, i.e. the person on the outside of their network, and the IP address that person knew with the internal IP address coming out of the VPN concentrator. So using our machine learning capabilities in the cloud, we've found that we can reliably connect the internal IP address to the external IP address when we're tapped on both sides of the VPN gateway. And we will now surface those external IPs on these devices so that help desk or a security analyst can search by an external IP and find the internal device representation of what that person has done inside the VPN. This is, I think, a really cool piece of math, and B, a really powerful feature for teams that are having to suddenly support way more VPN users than they ever anticipated. So I'm really excited by this one. If you couldn't tell, I really like working at ExtraHop, so I'm excited by lots of these things. All right, and then next thing I want to talk about is cloud services. Everyone uses them all the time, whether they're supposed to or not. So Dropbox, CrashPlan, Zoom, infamously. And the ExtraHop already tracks data to external IP addresses, but we found that it would be more useful to aggregate some of that information by the service with which the person was communicating. That way, if you want to know, is anyone in my org using Dropbox, it's very easy to find that out now. And you can, from this chart, see which devices were using Dropbox and how much data was sent. Finally, we have a set of smaller enhancements. We make these every release to ensure that the product continues to be more usable, more friendly to new people, that power users have more capabilities at their disposal. So this quarter, we've continued to expand the device model catalog. So the set of things that we recognize and identify based on wire signals. We've emphasized medical devices this quarter. So a lot of medical imaging systems will now be automatically discovered. One note on that is that the device model rule set is cloud updated for all RevealX customers who are connected to ExtraHop Cloud Services. So when Apple announced the 2nd gen iPhone SE, within hours, all RevealX systems knew how to identify that device on the wire and were prepared to show when that thing came online. Next up, we've improved filtering of drill down. So for people who need to look at metrics at a subnet level instead of at an IP level, that's now available. And finally, we added a thing that I think a bunch of us honestly forgot we didn't have for a couple of releases, which was we knew the time that a device was first seen, but we didn't surface when it was last seen. So now if a device has been inactive for a while, the UI will clearly call that out for you. All right. So that is all the slides I have. I can now take any questions that people might have.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. And yeah, so if anybody has questions, feel free to I guess pop them into the chat or just ask. Michael, we were, I guess, shooting to be done right about now. So anything else you want to cover or anybody else, happy to take questions.
Yep, calling once, calling twice. If you got questions, please either do the chat or anybody can speak up and unmute themselves as well. So
while we're doing that, I will point out that I realize that there are both existing ExtraHop customers and non-existing ExtraHop customers on here, and so realizing that we started with a targeted use case around the work from home and the product roadmap, but if any of you would like to go through kind of an ExtraHop 101, reach out to your appropriate counterparts at SET or any of the folks here on the phone, we're happy to set that up. Another thing I will point out is you can just go out to extrahop.com and on the top right, you can say start demo and you can fill out your name here and it'll take you straight into a demonstration as well. And there is actually there's a hyperlink we can send you as well. That's an ungated link, but for that matter, you click the button here and it takes you straight in. You don't have to wait for anybody in sales or anything to come back and vet your account. You can just come straight to the demo, and this is a full-on demo system that Steve and Jeremy were walking you through earlier. So you have access to a fully functioning system.
So while you've got this up, Tom, I actually want to tell a funny short story about this thing. I take great pride as a product manager at ExtraHop in breaking this each release by adding capabilities that expose the way that we make the demo. So the way that we make the demo is we have traffic that plays on a loop. And as we've improved ExtraHop's ability to extract value from packets, we keep finding interesting artifacts of either the demo creation or the sanitization or other processes that we've done that require us to go back and rework the demo. So it's pretty cool to have seen how in the span of a year, we added so much awareness that twice we had to go generate new traffic just to maintain this like.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of effort by a lot of folks in the product, but also the demo as well. I mean, this, like I said, this is a full-on functioning ExtraHop system. These are real packets you can come in and download. Of course, I clicked the wrong button here, but yeah, anybody who wants to come in and click through and access the product, kind of what I clicked right over when I come in here, just out of habit, is I'm showing my age here, but I call this the VH1 pop-up videos version of ExtraHop, because it literally will talk you through kind of step-by-step a full-on workflow. Now, you can squelch these if you want, but there's literally a multi-stage attack campaign that's going on here using, you know, a lot of the commonly seen tools out there in the world, like Metasploit, things like that. So it'll talk you through exactly what to do. But once you kind of get the hang for what you're doing, you can kind of squelch those and click around and do whatever you want to. So accessible to everybody, and that's what we use from an ExtraHop SE and field sales perspective to showcase the product.
That's very cool. Thanks for sharing that, guys.
Any questions?
Well, looks like maybe not. So, guys, I'll go ahead and close this out. Tom, Kathleen, everybody on the ExtraHop side, we appreciate you putting this together.
Thank you very much.
Good presentation. For anybody who joined for this portion of it from the customer side, first of all, I want to apologize to those of you who got a bad link. We are going to get that fixed. We did have this recorded, so we are going to be sending this out. We'll get a link out later today to everybody that joined, and so you'll be able to pick up the first few minutes that you missed. So do apologize for that, but you will have the recording to go through. Also, we'll be sending out a Google Forms questionnaire. So any kind of feedback you can give us, we really appreciate it. And whoever completes that form is going to be entered into a drawing for a $100 Amazon gift card. We'll be drawing that winner on Monday. So if you've got the time and want to give us some feedback, we would really appreciate that. Already seen a few chats going through on Zoom itself saying it was a good presentation from some of our customers. So we really appreciate that feedback as well. But if you can go into that link that we'll send out, you'll be entered into that drawing. So with that, I'll go ahead and close it out. Kathleen, you got anything to say, or otherwise I'll just go ahead and close it out. As she's searching, scrambling for the unmute button probably or something, but all right.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Bye.
Thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
Have a good day.